No country can ever truly flourish if it stifles itself of the potential of its women. If it deprives itself of the contribution, the positive contribution that women can bring to the bigger scheme of what the country wants to achieve. These are the words of Michelle Obama. With those strong words, today we are looking at the EFF's first planning session where they invited Professor Phakeng to give a remarkable presentation. Today, my ask and my plea with you is that you put aside all party politics, push aside the color of shirt that you want to wear, and let's just look and delve deep into the message. In this message, she spoke about the leadership versus management, the importance thereof, the characteristics that one should look into, and how then do we then use those characteristics to improve our own lives. I really hope that you can watch this and you can enjoy. Please do sit and enjoy.
Leadership demands the courage to speak the truth. And you know, this party has shown that courage to speak the truth, even when it is uncomfortable. The credibility of any organization is dependent on the strength of its leader. If your leader is weak, the organization is going to be weak. So you need your leader to be strong, because the organization becomes strong. They are the organization. Doesn't matter what you say. Doesn't matter what you... Of course you must contribute. That's why you are in this leadership team.
Yeah, cool.
Having looked at that introduction, let's take some time to look at the work that she has done, how she has contributed positively in the world of academia, and the work that she has done and where she has worked. Professor Phakeng, in 2018, contributed as a Vice Chancellor at the University of Cape Town. I think this is when she gained prominence, and a lot of us as Africans and the country at large starting to get to know her work and the work that she's been doing. But before then, she was a Deputy Vice Chancellor as well at the same university, I think in 2017. So she did a stint then. But before then, she also was a Vice Principal for Research and Innovation at UNISA. So some members or some people who are watching here today have seen her work and they've studied under her at UNISA. And lastly, I think, which is quite critical and important that we mention, she has written 80 research papers, and of that 85 of those have been edited volumes and published, so which is very important. So when we speak about her and the work that she has done, she really holds her work in high esteem and high regard. So we must then look at her work and look at some of the things that she has done and how she has contributed, not only for us as South Africans, but for women at large. And she says that proudly. But really, let's then delve into the speech and look at what she has said and how then can we use that to inspire ourselves as we move forward. Now, let's take some time and delve into the speech itself. The setting of the speech and what stood out for me and the other elements that formed part of the speech. Normally we speak about having an introduction, a body, and then right at the end a conclusion, but the more advanced speakers don't go with this blueprint. So if you've been in the industry for long, you'd understand that sometimes you don't get to have an introduction, a body, and then right at the end a conclusion. And that was what stood out as well with this particular speech. She then just spoke about a theme. Her theme was leadership versus management. And if you look at the speech and if you listen to some of the work that she has done through the speech, the themes come across. So an example would be, as she's in the introduction, she speaks about leadership and management. In between, she makes examples and gives you live examples on her personal life, on leadership and the importance of management, etc., and the difference between the two. And right at the end, she has done the same, reiterating the importance of leadership versus management. So I think those as well, if you are more experienced and understanding the speaking environment and you are more well conversant with your work and you are more confident, I think confidence is an important part when you are writing your speech. Like her, you can then do your own thing and start using other alternatives and mechanisms to write your speech. In the beginning, she spoke about three important things that for me stood out before she even got into a speech. At the beginning, she noticed, and if you watch the speech, she spoke about African time, what we call African time, and members of the African community arriving late at meetings. She said, before going to this plenary session, she made it a point that she goes there and she gets there on time, which is something important. But my question to you, the audience and the people that are looking and watching from home, when did we allow this thing of people saying African time is always late, African time is always laziness, and all of those? Why do we say I arrived on African time and that automatically means I was late, etc.? I think we need to get to a point where we change that narrative, because it says a lot about us. Is it acceptable for us to start saying when you are late, you arrived and with African time or on African time? Can't we change it and look at other ways of looking at this? I think we've taken control of it, but for me, it still makes me uncomfortable to then say, always it's the African people that are normally late. And it's something that we've acclimatized to, and it's something that we've accepted. But it's a question that I'm also throwing to you as an African person or as a person who's looking in. You don't need to be an African, but do you subscribe to the same understanding of the things that I'm talking about? After that, she mentioned, and she was then saying, the Chris Brown and the EFF conference and the EFF plannings and all of those. What is the difference between the two? And she was saying she had the privilege of going to the Chris Brown event, and she also had the privilege of being invited to the EFF. And on both occasions, she was invited as a VIP. So she says she had first-hand experience of the two events. And people would then say the Chris Brown was the first event of its magnitude, and the theatrics that were put there and how beautiful it was, and etc. And she's saying really in her messaging that we as Africans must start enjoying and appreciating our own work. So she says there was no difference. In fact, the EFF event was more better in terms of prestige, how it looked, and the experience of the VIP than the other event, which for me stood out and it made a lot of sense. And I really appreciated her wording when she made this. Lastly, and something that I hold dear as well, and I think as South Africans as well, most of us has seen this. She says that the EFF has taken center stage in being the vanguard of standing for black issues and African issues. She says when people start having issues at home and, at work and all of those, everyone wants to call the EFF to be there. And she says, she asked the question, why then don't you join the party if that's how you feel? And she says that it's a question that people still don't know how to answer today. So for me, it showed the importance of your Pan-African ideas and the importance of putting Africans and appreciating our own work, but also saying that whatever we contribute, we ourselves must start appreciating that. And that's how then we'll start moving forward as Africans. Considering how she laid that foundation, considering the importance of the message that she led with, for me, it had her audience eating out of the palm of her hand. One is forced really to sit on the edge of the seat and to listen to that message when you begin with those words. Really strong way to begin her speech, and one was then sitting in anticipation of what is to come in the body or in the middle of her presentation. In the middle of her presentation, she then delved deep into the difference. She didn't speak about what is the same, but she spoke about what is difference between leadership and management. In the beginning, she began with saying, leaders are born, leaders can also be made. And this is an old argument where people are saying, are leaders truly born or can leaders be made? In this argument, she was then saying they can be both. Leaders can be born. It can be something that you are born with, something that you embody as you grow old into these positions, etc. And then she says you can also be made into a good leader. So meaning your education, the people you hang around, and the people that contribute towards your life can add to your trajectory as a leader within your working space. So she put that there, and then she juxtaposed that with managers are made. So managers cannot be born. She says that managers are made. And for me, that's quite important. And if you disagree, I'd also like to hear those different views. She says that managers are made. So meaning as a manager, if you want to contribute positively within your environment, you have to go to school, you have to learn how to manage people and the people that are there reporting to you. So that's the differences that she has brought in, I think, in the beginning there. Second, she spoke about leadership is a burden to you. So it's not a privilege. I think that those are the words that she used. Leadership is not a privilege. Leadership is a burden. So it's something that you take. It's a cross that you bear for my Christian audience. So it's a burden to the leaders. So it's something that we take. But managers are, it's a job, it's overtime. And this is why she was then saying, as a vice chancellor at Cape Town, she was called in the evening, woken up at 2 a.m. in the morning to go and assist. There was a student who was having issues. So she then had to balance to say, if I was a manager, I would say my time is done. Someone else will deal with that issue. But because she was a leader, she then understood that it's a burden. I have to wake up. I have to wake up my husband if you are with your husband, or your wife if you are with your wife, to go and assist. And that is the essence of leadership. And to me, really, she made an example that really some of us can relate to, which then made quite sense. Leadership is a duty. She spoke about duty, which for me is something that gets lost in the translation of what leadership is. Leadership is duty. So I don't have to wake up and be tired to say, I need to go and lead a group of people. I need to lead the people that look up to me. So it's a duty. I'm duty bound to go and lead. So when you are elected as a leader, in whether or not you are at school, at a leadership role in school, it's a duty. Once you are elected there by people, it is your duty to then lead those people. And she made those distinctions, which for me made a lot of sense. She speaks about something that is very important in the heart of her conversation. She says that there are roles that demand leadership, but only get management, which for me is so powerful. There are roles that demand leadership, but ultimately get people who are then saying, it's not my responsibility, it's not within my purview, someone else will deal with it. And she says that ultimately people want leaders but get managers. So as managers, and in fact, I don't think that her speech was bashing management. You can be a manager within your space, but people shouldn't expect you to lead and then it turns out that you are a manager. And people sometimes confuse the two. But for me, she really hit home with unpacking what leadership is and what management is. And I think when you look at the two, she really spoke about being a visionary when you are a leader. You are in that position put there by people. You cannot then say, no, but I can't serve in a certain capacity, because she was speaking in a room full of politicians. She then spoke about the importance of members understanding when you stand there as a person saying, I'm ready to lead, that indeed when you get there, you don't then turn into a manager who's then saying, my time is money, I can't go to a certain area, I can't then serve you because you are not part of politics. And really, when you look at this argument of the EFF then saying, because people didn't vote for us in certain regions and in certain areas, we are not going to go there anymore. When members are being mistreated at work, within the business environment, we are not going to go there. Part of being leaders is then going there irrespective of whether or not it's your constituents. That's being a leader in society. And I think the professor was really outlining those issues, which for me made a lot of sense. Today, I've made some pointers and I don't want to misquote and to forget certain issues. And that's why I've then written some issues down. She then speaks about 6 factors that you enter into when you become a leader, which for me then forms part really as a parting shot and a strong statement to her speech, speaking about leadership. She says, number 1, there's no such thing as a leader being within your right. So it's not a right. And I think I've touched on this as well. She says, being in a leadership is a privilege that people afford you. And this is why sometimes they can take a position, but a leader can still be there doing the work from the front. So you don't need a formalized position to be a leader. And that for me really stood out and it made a lot of sense. Number 2, which was very important as well, she spoke about leadership is not a privilege but a burden. I think that has been a theme across her speech, saying leadership is a burden. So people must understand that you are going to be called after office hours, after operating hours, in instances where you don't want to help. But because you understood the burden, then you need to be there in front to lead. She says that you must be a leader that can define their own legacies. What do you want to leave the people with? So when you are a leader, you are not leading today, but you are leading for what is to come tomorrow, which for me stood out and it really, really hit home to saying that sometimes when we get into these leadership positions, we are looking at the now and what our predecessors used to do and the inadequacies and the shortcomings thereof. But in a presentation, she spoke about the importance of looking at tomorrow. And this is why we then say leaders are visionaries, looking at tomorrow, what is to come tomorrow, what am I going to leave here once I've done, once I've served my term, how am I going to leave this thing? Right at the end, she then speaks about when you get into a position and something changes. So a leader then comes to change things. She speaks about a stint as Vice Chancellor or the Chancellor at the University of Cape Town, where she was saying it was an ordinary thing to be inaugurated and to have your welcoming celebrations, etc. And she said, no, but why do I need these celebrations when students are struggling, students are looking for money here, students are looking for things here, but I'm taking thousands and thousands of rands and I'm traveling to these different countries. She said she doesn't even want to fly first class because she understood the plight of a student. And I think really in those words, it became really important for her to explain the role of a leader and a true leader. And right at the end, she spoke then about the differences between leadership and management. I think this is a very interesting speech. If I were to grade it, I think for me, it deserves an 8 out of 10. It was nippy, it was to the point, and she really was interactive with her audience, which then for me really stood out. I think one can go and really research her work and follow her work. She's on all of these social media platforms. I don't know currently what she's doing because she's no longer a chancellor at the University of Cape Town, but one can really go and research her work, push aside what she believes in, push aside that people are sometimes saying that she's arrogant as a leader but the work speaks for itself and the contributions that she has made in that part of the world, looking there, being a woman in a leadership role, having all this power, but she then brought it to the people. And in certain instances, she was there when students graduated and she spoke quite positively for her students. Really, for me, all in all, that speech stood out for me and it really made sense. Let me hear what you also think. Let me know what you think maybe in the next episode we should bring and the speech that we should look at and the impact that is had within our environment. Let's see each other again next time. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe and follow us and the work that we are doing. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.